Hello, hello. Can you
Hello.
hear? OMG, girl, I'm so sorry. The I am in my car and I was going to use my phone, and for
Yeah.
some reason it didn't work. So here we are, letting everybody in right now. All right, all right, all right. How's it going, girls?
Hi,
I
everyone.
apologize for running a little bit behind here. Was having internet issues. As you can see, I'm in my car. So I'm traveling right now, and and for some reason it just decided not to work. And it always works because I've done many calls on my car. All right, super excited. So because we are behind, I'm gonna jump right into this, and I'm just close a few windows here just to make sure that we have good. Give me a second here, just to make sure we have a good connection. My computer is not slow. All right. Okay. So we are super excited for this call. We're always excited, right? Because seriously, my life is just exciting, honestly, everything's exciting. Just a lot of things going on at the same time, but it's all good. Um, as you all know, I am heading to Brazil on Monday, so I have a full plate and doing a lot of things here. Um, gosh, hold on, because my computer is asking for something. 01 1875. Sorry, girls. A lot happening here at the same time. Okay, let's go. So we have Sarah, Coach Sarah, on this call with us today. So, Sarah, I'm just going to give a quick introduction about Sarah, and then I'll let her take over and introduce herself with all her, certifications and allocates and all those kind of things, all the good stuff that everybody needs to like to know, right? But I met Sarah at MMU, where we are taking our certifications, that it feels like it's never going to end because they keep adding more and more certifications. And now we have the peptide certifications, and we have that certification, and then they had another level of certification. I'm like, holy cow. But I met Sarah. She was one of the head coaches there. And I would bring a lot of my cases to discuss with her. And then she ended up leaving, and I was like, girl, I want to work with you. Like, do you have some space on your roster to come and help out? And she's like, yep, I would totally do it. And also, I hired her as my personal hormone coach to help me with all the blind spots. I believe that we all need coaches, and I've always had coaches. And, and I love working with her because we bounce back ideas. She has so much knowledge, and I just admire a lot of her work and her knowledge. And I think that it's a huge win-win, not only for our clients, but for, what I'm trying to do for me personally. So with that being said, Sarah has been on the back end of, all the protocols, helping making sure that everything is on point, because she is a registered dietitian, and a lot of those things can be ran and done through her. So Sarah, go take over. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today, and hopefully we will leave some space for some Q&A at the end of the call. But let's go.
Perfect. Thanks for the intro. I'm going to share my screen and then I can share the presentation either with both of you, Coach Patricia and Lindsay. So the people on the call, or if you want to post it somewhere, I'll share the presentation. Obviously, it's recorded here too. So I'm going to send access. I don't know, Coach Patricia, can you give me access to
Got
share
it.
my screen? Okay, perfect. Let me go here, and then I'm gonna go to present in 1 second. Just when I go to present, sometimes I can't see you all, so I want to first say hi and introduce myself and kind of give you a little bit of a background on what we are going to talk about. So my name is Sarah. I've been a registered dietitian for 12 years. I have my master's degree in nutrition and dietetics with like a sports minor. So that's kind of when I got into the peptide and HRT world in clinic, was working more so with like sports education. I think it's important not only for this conversation of, I really wanted to talk to you guys about like the pros and cons of HRT, the pros and cons about peptides, how they can both work together. I also think leading up to that conversation, it's important to understand what are basic hormones in general and what is inflammation in the body, because a lot of fixing your hormones or even being on HRT or peptides comes with making sure that your inflammation and your stress is good. And when I say inflammation, that basically goes hand in hand with stress, which you'll see a correlation in these slides with me talking about those two things. So I'm going to first give just like a little bit of an intro on inflammation and hormones, and then we'll get into the pros and cons about HRT and peptides and chat a little bit more about that. So let me go into present really quick. Perfect. So a little bit about inflammation and hormones. I want you to understand that inflammation and hormones are connected, and it first starts with cortisol and DHEA. Cortisol and DHEA are linked together, and then it's kind of like all five of these puzzle pieces work in the body when we're talking about inflammation and hormones. With talking about inflammation and being on HRT, we have to pay attention to carbohydrate metabolism, because most of our inflammation comes from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are going to be more of, are we having simple or complex carbs? Are we having processed sugar? And then I also think it's very important that you have to understand metabolism in general with understanding hormones and being able to be on HRT. So when I talk about carbohydrates and metabolism, I'm talking about glucose, homeostasis in the body, weight and fat distribution. I think some people always have this great goal of, I want to lose weight, but weight loss is also very different than being able to lose fat and lose body fat percentage too. So I think it's also distinguishing, do you care about weight or do you care about body fat percentage? Body composition, how is your body composition looking like? We know we can have two people weigh 150 and look completely different, and that's going to be because of their hormones, their stress, their inflammation, their metabolism. And then it's also important to understand protein turnover. Are you digesting all of your protein? Are you having too much or having too little? And then mucosal integrity, which is going to be your gut health. Your hormones are made in the gut, so it's really, really hard if you're on HRT or trying to correct your hormones and you don't have a good gut foundation. Second piece of this puzzle with fixing hormones and inflammation is, of course, detox and inflammation modulation. When I talk about inflammation modulation, it's more going to be autoimmune markers, testing for CRP and inflammation markers in the blood, pro-inflammatory agents, immune upregulation. So have we had COVID? Have we had the chicken pox before? Have we had measles? And then detox is going to be paying attention to how our liver and kidneys are detoxing, but also how our chemicals and toxins coming out of the body, heavy metals, and then hormone detox. Are we able to get rid of estrogen? What's the difference between estrogen and the metabolites of estrogen? Also, hormones play a huge role in tissue health, and this is going to be more so memory, learning, sleep, and mood. We know that we can be on hormone replacement therapy or on supplements, and we can have mood swings. It could be affecting our sleep. We can be on
Sarah,
progesterone.
I apologize.
You're okay.
I need to just cut you off really quick. Coach Lindsay, can you please accept you as a host? Because I am trying to figure out my internet here, and I'm concerned that it would drop. But if I make you a host, even if I drop, you will still have the room.
Yes, I
sent
think
you.
I do.
Did you
I
accept
do
it?
have it. I didn't have to. It just said you are the host now.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Continue, Sarah. Apologize.
It's okay. And then with mood and sleep, we know that if we're on progesterone, for example, that might help our sleep, or taking a supplement like Chasteberry or Vitex might help our sleep. Then we also want to pay attention with hormones to endocrine function. And endocrine function is going to be your thyroid, your insulin, and your ovarian function. And I'm going to dive into liver and thyroid a little bit later for your understanding on HRT. And then skeletal muscular health, which is of course going to be muscle integrity. How much muscle do you have? That is one of the biggest benefits of HRT, is preserving muscle and not being able to lose muscle. Bone turnover, typically as we start to age and enter peri and postmenopause, we're going to have some bone turnover. And then paying attention to connective tissue, how are joints, how are inflammation, all of that. I like to always give a definition of what is inflammation, because inflammation can be taken across a broad spectrum. Really, inflammation can be important for our body because it is a protective reaction by a body's response. So I always tell all coaches, like, all food is inflammatory, even healthy food, but it's the level of food that you're having that's going to cause more inflammation in the body. So some inflammation is good in the body. The first step about paying attention to inflammation is health or repairing process after an injury or stress. So that's also something we want to pay attention. Is inflammation always there? Is inflammation there more when we're stressed? Or is inflammation there because of like joint pain or an injury or changes to our connective tissue and muscle? In terms of the definition of chronic inflammation, this is usually a factor that is going on in your body 6 months or greater, up to a year or greater. Factors that contribute to chronic inflammation is going to be environmental toxins, poor diet, drugs, and these are typically like NSAID use, not like extensive drugs, increased weight, and stress on the body. With this going on, these are all of the health factors that can cause a reaction in your body, and that's why having labs and assessments is so important. Typically with chronic inflammation, it can lead to, over time, cancer, neurological diseases, pulmonary diseases, bone and joint disease, rheumatoid arthritis, which is going to be more of an autoimmune disease that can fall under down here, metabolic disorders, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. And then under each of these categories, I talk about some of these words that might be familiar with those disease states. Cortisol. The one thing we want to pay attention to with hormones and paying attention to HRT is, how is our cortisol in our body? Being on estrogen, progesterone, testosterone doesn't equate to managing your cortisol levels. So it's very important to pay attention to stress and inflammation on the body when on HRT. Cortisol directly influences your insulin levels and your metabolism. So say you were taking your blood sugar levels and there might be one good week and your blood sugars look great. They're sitting around 83, 86, etc. Then maybe you had a very stressful week. You lost your job, death in the family. You might see blood sugars shoot up into the hundreds, 120s, 130s. A lot of blood sugars not only correlate with food, but correlate with stress levels. So if a client is telling me that they're eating healthy, but we're continuously having high blood sugar levels, most likely there is some cortisol or stress, even if a client doesn't realize that they're stressed. There's many different types of stress: perceived stress, emotional stress, physical stress, and past stressors. Depletion of cortisol can cause a pro-inflammatory state on the body. Prolonged and large amounts is going to cause acute short-term stress. And a problem with that is inflammation doesn't stop. If we have stress, more and more cortisol is being produced, more and more inflammation is being produced. As body adapts to chronic stress, it becomes more hyper insulinemia. So not only are we having blood sugar issues, but then we start to produce a lot more insulin, which then creates more visceral fat with more insulin. So most of our fat doesn't really come from high blood sugars all the time. It comes from insulin production. This fuels more cortisol secretion, which then causes a vicious cycle of stress, weight gain, more fat, inflammation, stress, weight gain, more fat, inflammation. It's going to then go in a circle. Hormone balance is also important. So sometimes when you're on HRT, if you're only on one type of hormone, it's also very important to be testing your hormones to seeing the ratios of those hormones. As we age, hormone balance factors, and especially as we age, excessive cortisol is counterbalancing to estrogen and testosterone drops. So say as you're going into peri or postmenopause, you have a big drop in estrogen and a big drop in testosterone because you're not having a menstrual cycle anymore, you're most likely probably having this huge increase in cortisol because two of your most important hormones just dropped very, very low. Typically, this results in chronic high cortisol levels, which then leads to high insulin levels, reduced immune system function, and low thyroid function. So not only is it harmful when hormones go low, and that's sometimes why we want to be on HRT, we also have to pay attention to what is our liver and our thyroid doing as well. This is why we sometimes have trouble losing weight. We might start to get a lot more chronic infections. So a lot of people tell me as they enter peri and postmenopause that they get more UTIs or yeast infections. And then we typically just feel fatigue, which can be very different for everyone. Does it feel like we have to take naps all the time? We can't work out as much anymore. Our workouts can't be as long. Fatigue could be categorized very differently. Insulin is produced by your pancreas in response to food in your system. So when we talk about blood sugar is when you eat and it's floating around in your bloodstream. We want blood sugar to turn into glucose and to enter your cell, which is very different than insulin. You can't eat something and it becomes insulin. Insulin is released from your pancreas. So typically when we pay attention to insulin, we want to, of course, watch diet strategies. We want to pay attention to how processed our food is. Are we having a lot of refined foods, which is pumping out more and more insulin from the pancreas when we do this? Excessive insulin eventually leads to insulin resistance, which is kind of a buzzword right now that you're probably learning or hearing about. And your body needs more and more to do the same job. So something that was once easy, if we ate a banana and we felt satisfied, we might later be like, oh, I need a banana and a chocolate chip cookie to feel that satisfaction. And then this trend typically spirals out of control, which causes inflammation on the body and oxidative stress on the body, which can be tested on a Dutch hormone test. I do tell all clients too, with testing hormones as you enter peri and postmenopausal, it's important to see hormones from blood tests, but it's also very important to see hormones from urine and saliva and do a Dutch hormone test as well. Typically with entering peri and postmenopause, the first hormone to change is going to be estrogen. Decreases in estrogen correspond with a rise in cytokines, which cytokines are basically just pro-inflammatory chemicals. There's two different types of pro-inflammatory chemicals, interleukin-1 and interleukin-6. Both of these can be tested with a blood test, and they're just inflammation markers in the blood. Estrogen also affects your joints by keeping inflammation down. So as estrogen leaves the body and starts to decline during perimenopause, joints get less and less estrogen, which then typically causes more pain on certain women. Lowering environmental inflammation can help manage your hormones as they are decreasing. The first step to lowering hormones from decreasing fast or paying attention to environmental toxins is removing inflammatory foods. All of your coaches are going to have a great list of high and low inflammatory foods for you, and that's what they're always incorporating on your plans. We also want to try and avoid endocrine disruptors. So endocrine disruptors are laundry detergent that we're using, perfumes, makeup, shampoos, body washes, lotions, all of those fun things. Lifestyle changes, we of course want to be eating diet variation, eating for our body. And then step 4 is labs. We always want to test hormones with labs, inflammation markers with labs, and they all correspond together. Lowering inflammation in the body is typically done through diet, number 1. So the highest inflammatory foods that we want to avoid are dairy, gluten, alcohol, sugar, processed snacks, vegetable oils, soy, sunflower oil, and canola oil. This is typically where I tell clients more olive oil, more coconut oil, more ghee butter, things like that as well. Step 2 is going to be paying attention to plastics. We typically don't want to be drinking a bunch of water bottles or storing our meal prep in plastic. We want to try to stick with glass or other types of environmental safe containers. Air fresheners are typically things we want to stay away from in our car or our house, using non-toxic free candles, dishwashing soap, laundry detergent, deodorants, toothpaste, lotions. All of this is being absorbed in the body, which will change your hormones. Step 3 is limiting caffeine intake. Caffeine in moderation, totally safe with balanced hormones. Green tea can be very important for hormones and gut health. Adaptogenic support, so this would be a supplement that your coach has you on for your adrenals or your cortisol levels. Weightlifting is super important, trying to work out 2 to 4 times a week. Vitamin D. I cannot stress enough how important vitamin D is for your hormones, because vitamin D is a precursor for your sex hormones. If you have low vitamin D, it is very hard to keep your hormones within range. And then proper stress relief. I can't tell all clients exactly what to do with stress, but I find it extremely important to manage your stress, whether that is through therapy, whether that is through the gym, whether that is through mindset coaching, journaling, meditation, yoga, however you want to work on your stress, but you should be doing something daily and weekly for your stress management. 3 breathing techniques per day for 2 minutes, a massage each week, whatever is going to be helpful. Some things can definitely be free, like Epsom salt baths, cold therapy, but it is very important to manage stress. Step 4 is going to be labs, not only testing your hormones in your labs, but testing your ANA, your antibodies, your CRP, your ESR, and an autoimmune panel can be important. And now we're going to start to move into the pros and cons about HRT. I also think it's important to talk about what is HRT. So HRT is hormone replacement therapy, and it's a treatment that replaces your hormones, whether it's in supplement form or in injectable form or cream form or suppository form. Primarily, HRT is used for estrogen and progesterone. That way, the body may not produce enough of this hormone anymore, especially during menopause or perimenopause. And it's used to elevate symptoms that are associated with decreasing hormones. Most of those symptoms are going to be hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, and other physical and emotional changes associated with entering this new phase. I want to first start with the top 4 pros of being on hormone replacement therapy. And when I talk about these pros, typically this is talking about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, being on all 3, being on 2, or being on 1. Most type of HRT is going to be effective at relieving your symptoms. That's the #1 reason HRT is put in place, to help with your symptoms. Hot flashes, night sweats, sleep problems, mood changes, vaginal dryness. The #2 thing that HRT is used for is preventing osteoporosis. We just talked a lot about how you have thinning of the bones, estrogen decreases, which causes joint pain. It helps with not developing fractures, healthy bone structure as that estrogen is decreasing. Third pro of being on HRT is maintaining the muscle strength that you currently have. HRT does not always mean that you can necessarily build a bunch of muscle unless you're on probably peptides and testosterone. The main point of being on estrogen and progesterone is to keep the muscle that you do have, because as we age, we do not want to lose that muscle. It's common to lose much muscle as you reach perimenopause, so HRT can improve that strength and help you not lose the muscle that you've already developed up into that point. And then the 4th reason to be on HRT is it can help with sex feeling less painful, enjoyable again, and might even help with some cognition health, brain, fatigue, items like that. In terms of the 4 pros of HRT, none of these pros equate to like weight loss. That is not really the point of HRT. So I think a lot of women have confusion that being on HRT can help lose weight. That is not one of the pros of being on HRT. These are the pros of being on HRT. And when your lifestyle, your stress, and these things are in order, it can equate to weight loss, but that isn't necessarily why I'm going to put a client on HRT. Cons of being on HRT, and when I do talk about these things, specifically the top two things, these are very rare cases, but breast cancer can develop with HRT. But as I wrote here, HRT can slightly increase the risk. However, it's very low, and it happens in about 5% of cases. And this is more so when someone's on HRT for 5 to 10 years or longer. So if you're on it for 5 years or less, very low occurrence, probably less than 1%, and still a very low occurrence at 5% with people on it for a longer period of time. Blood clots can be very common with HRT. One way you will not get blood clots is more so if you did like estrogen patches, you did testosterone spray, you did progesterone suppositories. Those do not increase the risk of clotting. Only injections will, and there's many different types of forms of HRT. Estrogen is also safer through the skin as well. So my favorite form of estrogen is always going to be a patch first, then an injectable, because it's safer through the skin. Side effects of HRT, we know that HRT is supposed to help most side effects entering peri and postmenopausal, but there is side effects to being on HRT. And one of those is more like skin issues. I'll typically have clients say they may get some like pimples or rashes, and that's just with a huge increase of hormones when your hormones were so used to being low. Weight gain. Weight gain can be more so a factor of being on HRT versus weight loss. Most weight gain only happens though the first 1 to 3, 4 weeks as your body adjusts. And most of it is going to be water retention because we're entering healthy hormones back into your body. Mood swings, when you do start HRT, until it becomes leveled out, your hormones can go very high or low, which will equate to mood swings and changes. And then increased hair growth or brush changes are typically ones that I hear as well. Sometimes the hair growth can be a good thing if people feel like their hair was thinning or shedding, but you can also have increased hair growth like in all body parts. So arms, legs, vaginal area, and that could just be the increase of androgens and estrogen and testosterone back in the body. And then with being on HRT, it's not necessarily a con, but it's something that I tell clients you have to pay attention to, is when you're on HRT, you really need to be testing your hormones every 3 to 6 months because they are going to change a lot quicker than someone not on HRT. So something like your estrogen can go very high or low quickly if we are increasing a dose or trying to find the level that you feel best at. So with testing hormones, we typically want to test every 3 to 6 months. And when we do test our hormones, we also want to look at thyroid and liver health along with how our hormones are looking too. Why I want you to pay attention to liver and thyroid health when you're testing your hormones is because thyroid function is intertwined with reproductive hormone function. So both natural hormones, like as like a middle-aged woman that's having a cycle, you still want to test your thyroid function because it's super important. For example, if you have low estrogen, it often leads to hypothyroid. So if I was able to see that you have low estrogen and look at your thyroid production, I would be able to better help you because I'd be able to see a connection. However, HRT has been shown to affect the thyroid by stimulating it. Therefore, running a thorough thyroid panel on patients with HRT is essential because we want to see what that is doing. Same thing with liver health. It's vital for hormone health because the liver processes all hormones within the body. This includes hormones we make and hormones that we take. When taking HRT, it's essential to understand the health and function of your liver. A hepatic function panel can be given as a good oversight to your nutrition status of liver. From a dietetics perspective, and with me being a dietitian, if I have a client on HRT, my only concern is I don't care that you're on HRT. There's a lot of other factors with being on HRT that I have to pay attention to too. It doesn't just stop with, hey, I'm going to give you HRT, you're going to follow this diet. There's other things that have to be in order for the HRT and the diet to work. So from a dietetic perspective, I'm always looking at adequate calcium and vitamin D, as those things are critical for bone health, particularly during menopause when bone loss is common. Like I told you before, vitamin D is so vital because it's a precursor for your sex hormones. I know it's going to be very hard to increase sex hormones without adequate vitamin D. Maintaining a healthy weight helps reduce the risk of certain health conditions, including heart disease and cancer. The reason I'm bringing this up is as you enter peri and postmenopause, most of the time cholesterol, LDL, triglycerides can start to run on the high end, which is very common with entering peri and postmenopause. So maintaining a healthy weight, eating a healthy diet can help decrease these risks. I also want a diet really rich in fiber because it can help regulate blood sugar levels and improve digestive health. Being on HRT can sometimes cause constipation or changes. Including healthy fats like those found in avocados and nuts can support your hormone balance. Reducing the intake of processed foods and sugary drinks can help manage weight and improve overall health. And then physical activity. We still want to work on strength, improve mood, and manage menopause symptoms. So typically when you are working out or doing a workout class, it should also help improve your mood and you should feel good. Paying attention to cravings and emotional eating habits can help manage stress patterns and maintain a healthy eating balance. Sometimes we can understand when hormones are out of balance that we might start to have some binge eating disorders or changes. That's why it's also important to express to your coach if you are feeling stressed or something happens, because they're going to be able to better help understand if you are craving certain foods, where you're at in your cycle, if you're on HRT, etc. Now, what are peptides? This is going to be the last like 2 or 3 slides, and then we can get into some questions. I want to talk about what are peptides, pros and cons, and how they can aid with being on HRT. A peptide is basically just a peptide therapy that is a medical treatment that is used as short chain fatty acids or just a short chain amino acid trend. So all peptides are already naturally in your body. When you take a peptide alongside HRT, it's just used as an enhancement. Over time, say for example, BPC-157 is used for gut health, it's used for joint pain and inflammation. This is already naturally in my body, but as I age, stress, changes in diet, exercise, over exercising, that can go in and decrease the strain of amino acids in my body. So aiding and taking something like this can help increase it. It basically helps rebuild your cellular pathways naturally. The treatment can be used as hormone replacement therapy. It can be used alongside hormone replacement therapy to help with certain diseases and to manage chronic pain for many different types of patients. So some people might start with a peptide before HRT. Some might take a peptide with HRT if they want to focus on more weight loss or body fat or comp changes. Because remember, the part of HRT isn't necessarily weight loss. That's not why we go on HRT. Benefits of being on peptides typically will help with that lean muscle mass, which is not a benefit of being on HRT. It's not helping necessarily with lean muscle. It's helping preserve the muscle you do have. Healthy body weight. A peptide will typically help your body weight stay the same or help decrease it with being on that HRT. It does help lower cholesterol, helps with cardiovascular health. So you'll feel like if you want to do a cardio session or a strength training session, you have more energy and longevity. Strong bone density can help with fertility. So say I have a client maybe in their mid 40s, they don't know if they're peri or postmenopause, they still might want to have kids in their 40s, which is very common nowadays. It can help with maintaining fertility. Immune system, it does help regulate and calm down the immune system. Blood pressure regulation, and reducing inflammation in the body. So there's different peptides for different areas in the body, and I'm not going to get into all different types of peptides and their benefits, but I am going to talk about peptides and HRT together, and I am going to talk about some of the just most common peptides that you can take with HRT. And I believe this is the last slide, so then we can have like Q&A and some questions after this. Peptides and HRT are most likely used together, and peptides enhance hormone replacement therapy. So just think of this as like another stepping stone for helping your HRT. And it helps by stimulating hormone production better, optimizing cellular processes, and potentially reducing side effects. They work by acting as messengers that instruct your cells to release hormones or influence hormone production in your ovaries, testes, or other glands. So this can be like your adrenal glands, etc. Some peptides like ceramorelin can stimulate the release of growth hormone, which is going to be like your testosterone support as well, and other hormones in the body, which potentially lead to more energy, more stamina, more muscle mass, and improved overall health. Peptides can vary in terms of bodily functions. Most peptides are used for muscle growth, fat loss, sleep quality, and potentially improving overall well-being when combined with the HRT. And the most popular peptides, this is for females only, I'm talking, is CJC, epipramorelin, BPC, MK677, LDN, rampamycin, TB500, thyrosin alpha 1, and GHKCU. Then there's also a different set of peptides, which are very known as GL1Ps now, which most of you probably have heard of. And the top 3 GL1Ps that we will use with our HRT clinic is going to be a semaglutide, trizipatide, or the newest one is retatrutide, which is a combination of all 3 types of peptides. I did attach an article here that we can copy and paste, which is also very helpful. And last factor too is I will of course give these slides. When we click like thyroid function, for example, I attached a research article on the effects of estrogen treatments on the thyroid gland. So it's also very important to read research on some of these topics as well. And then there is a liver health research article as well that talks about how being on HRT can help with cellular liver production, bile function, etc. So all of these are very important with not only understanding what HRT is and peptides are, but also doing your own research. Again, I want to thank you guys for being here before we do the Q&A. I listed my information here. I listed my Instagram here. So I do post a lot about like HRT or peptides or just healthy nutrition information in general, along with your coaches always have great content. And then now we can do some Q&A.
Awesome, awesome. Oh my goodness. Okay, I want to just address a few things before we go into Q&A because so much here. I was taking some notes. And few things I would love to address, right? Because I've been always into doing things only with nutrition and training, right? I was one of those coaches or one of those people really that I was like, I do not believe in supplement, not because um not because I didn't believe that they didn't work, but I just didn't believe that I needed them because I've been always into nutrition and I always been into, feeding my body properly, juicing, doing all those amazing things. That's why I love nutrition. Uh, but the more, that I got into this perimenopause and I'm 50 and I've been through the loop with all kinds of hormone imbalances and, and all the crazy stuff that comes with it, I had to be open-minded to really try the supplements, the herbs, especially when I had my gut issues. And, this is something that I share, everybody already knows about this and doing the Dutch test and doing all those things and even being on peptides. So I noticed the huge difference, right? Not just on my own body, but on the clients that were open to do that. And when we do the blood work, obviously we check with you guys and we checked with the clinic, and it's all prescribed by, practitioners. But the clients that have, being open to this also have experience in enhance, right, and their body composition, and enhance and really removing that inflammation and really getting things in another level. And I find that sometimes, and I'm really trying to be on the, how can I say, on a fine line between not pushing things but really educating people. Even when people weren't talking about HRT, I was just like, girls, this is an option. You got to look into this. And this was like 4 years ago when people were not even talking about, right? So the same goes now with the supplements. And Sarah's going to come back to, to do another session on the flush protocol. So we won't have time to go over that today. But you know doing the flush protocol and doing the peptides, I've noticed how much my sleep improved, my skin, my hair, my nails, my gut, I mean, you name it, right, improves and enhances and optimizes. And a lot of times, I get a pushback from people when I offer different alternatives, if you will. um and I'm 100% fine as long as you understand and understand the reality, okay, of what we are going through as women in perimenopause and menopause. That unfortunately, for some of us, the nutrition only, it's not going to give the optimal results that you're looking for. Okay, and you already have seen that. The other thing I've noticed too is that rarely we have clients that are really good with the nutrition, but rarely we have a client that follows to the T, including myself. Okay, foods that are not inflammatory, right? Because I wanted to enjoy my life. I want to travel. I want to have I always talk about the 80-20 rules. You know what I mean? And when that happens, unfortunately, eating out and those oils that you can't not, how can I say, control, it affects the body. And I've noticed when our clients come back from trips, they are inflamed, they are having gut issues. Does that make sense? So my point is, I don't have a problem at all with you wanting to do everything 100% with nutrition, but you got to be realistic and not get frustrated and upset and getting into the blame game, you know, when you don't get the results that you want because you went on the weekend and you enjoyed yourself and you went on vacation and you enjoyed yourself, you came back bloated, now you're this, and then you're drinking, you are having, but Coach Patricia, I'm drinking less. Yes, but you're still drinking. And unfortunately for our age group, affects our body more. So my point is here, when you are having those extra cushion, I would say, with the proper supplementations, with the flush protocols, with maybe, a peptide here and there, we do a cycle, with, you don't need to do, how can I say, injection. You can take, in pill form. If you put that cushion around you, I've noticed for me that I am able to maintain a better physique and a better well-being than just doing 100% with nutrition. You see what I'm saying? So I think that the awareness of understanding that sometimes, unfortunately, we can only go so far when we are dealing with what I call a biological war inside of us that is constantly going up and down. Um, but one thing I would love for you to address this whole thing with the breast cancer, because obviously, you know, the nutrition part, that's why I love the Dutch test, because like you said, the liver, right, is where all our hormones are metabolized. So I love to do a Dutch test at least a good every 6 months, or obviously we can also see how the liver is being affected. So want to talk a little bit about that so people are not freaking out about, oh my gosh, I don't know if people have any questions on that, but how we would be able to catch that, for example, on a Dutch test.
Yeah, so that's why I always say it's important to test hormones, obviously through the blood, because you'll be able to see liver enzymes and hormones in the blood, and testosterone's better tested in the blood. Then it's important to do a Dutch test every 6 months to a year, every 8 months. And typically with that, it's not only testing hormones with urine and saliva, it's testing how your hormones are metabolizing and digesting through your body. So specifically on a Dutch hormone test, they have an E3 pathway and they have an E1 pathway. E1 is going to be more inflammation and inflammatory issues going on in the body, and E3 is going to be more of like that breast cancer pathway, gut issues going on in the body. So typically we are able to fix that E3 pathway, and then an E3 pathway leads to a 16-OH pathway, which if you have a Dutch, we're able to visualize and show you this. But that is how we know that if you are on HRT and it is affecting that breast cancer pathway, we can add in supplementation support to help inhibit that. But like I said, over, I don't even know, like thousands of people are on HRT, less than 5% have develop breast cancer because of it. Usually there's a lot of other factors that are developing the breast cancer with the HRT.
I love it. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why, as a girl, I am obsessed with the Dutch test. So anybody has any questions for Sarah, you can drop it on the comment, or you can how can I say, unmute yourself. We have 7 minutes left here. My girls are normally, they take a minute before they start doing it, but do it now. Any questions?
So I have a question. So I've had trouble finding people to actually test my hormones. I do have the Dutch test from you guys that I've not taken it yet, but what do you recommend on that? Like my gyno, she's like, oh, we don't test because we just go based on how you feel. So I've really had a hard time finding somebody to do those tests for me. What recommendations do you have for that?
Yeah, usually I say it has to be a functional doctor, but I can test all of your labs for you. So if you tell Lindsay or Coach Patricia, I can write lab orders. So I would put in all of your information and then it would send it to a LabCorp or Quest near you, and you'd be able to put in your zip code and then just go to a lab draw near you. So I can write all lab work orders. So typically functional doctors or working with like a functional dietitian is going to be your best bet to write those lab orders.
Yeah, and if you have the Dutch test, girl, get it done. Let's go. Anybody else? Wow, pretty shocking. Nobody has questions. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about stress. I think that is a topic that, a lot of times we know, like, what am I going to do, right? My life is my life is the way it is. There is nothing I can do, whether we have clients, for example, that travel all the time for work, or we have clients that have high, really demanding careers where their schedule is like crazy, right? And that is, that as how many clients you have, how many clients we have, it's not a joke, right? Our lives are definitely stressed. So, and a lot of times I find that people are so familiar and how can I say, they are so used to feeling stressed that they don't even think that they are stressed. You know what I mean? Until we do the blood work, and then the blood markers are through the roof, right? And and then they are like, well, I don't feel stressed, because sometimes people maybe correlate stress with bad things happening, right? And it is not necessarily the case, right? Stress is just the fact that we are on the go, we are on the high pace constantly, and it's really hard to shut it off, especially at the end of the day. But that is causing things in our bodies, causing inflammation, not just by the food that we are eating, but how the body's processing everything with that high cortisol. So what would you say, because I think people got desensitized with self-care, People got desensitized with, or they don't want to spend more money, for example, with a mindset coaching, right? Which is something that I recommend. We have Coach Seema in the program, and I'm always like, girl, you need a mindset coach, right? You need somebody to help you process those emotions, process those things. And a lot of people, and most people don't even take that into consideration because maybe they think, oh, I don't want to spend more money. But there are so many other ways that you can put into your life things, even in a cheaper way, like you're talking about Epsom salt bath. So if you would share with them, what are the couple of things that you recommend them doing that it would be highly effective for someone that is super stressed out, and no matter what we do with them, they still don't see results because they're just so flipping stressed that their body just don't flip and respond. You know what I mean? So what would be the one thing they could do on a weekly basis that would move the needle to keep that cortisol at bay?
Yeah, so I always say like your thoughts and how you talk about yourself and things that you say to yourself also affect like your stress level too. So there's a difference between, obviously, say you're running a bunch of errands or you get stuck in traffic. Obviously, then you might have a negative reaction. You start talking very negative, you start swearing, whatever that might be. Those are also going to affect like inflammation and stress and changes in your body. I would say no matter how busy someone's schedule is, because we can all have very busy schedules, I am still going to always do the 3 basic things per day. And for me, the basic things is some type of like positive affirmation or book with like a quote that I read each morning. So I currently have the Pivotal Year, which has like every single day in a year gives like a little entry, like a positive entry and positive affirmation. So write your own positive affirmations and read them back to yourself. So always reading something or starting my day on a positive note. Journaling can be very effective. Like journal your thoughts throughout the day, then go back. And if you journaled a negative thought, how do you change that to a positive thought the next day? Breathing techniques, I'm always going to do something. And this can be a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It depends on your day and how much time you have, but you can always do something. Even if your breathing technique is like if I tell a client you're driving home from work, you have a 30-minute drive, listen to a 5-minute calming podcast or something on the radio, or every time you hit a red light or stop sign, take 3 deep breaths. Like those are very simple things that you can still be doing per day, even though that you're busy. So I would say those are like the 3 main free things. Obviously, I do tell clients and even other coaches and myself, therapy, neurofeedback, podcast, all of those things are also going to be helpful. But emotional and physical stress doesn't need to just be those types of things. It can be like Coach Patricia said, like red light therapy, sauna usage, cold plunging, Epsom salt baths, dry brushing, essential oils. Like there's so many different things that you can do. Magnesium lotion or spray, a face routine or a mask at night can still be calming for your body too. So I do say to distinguish between what is a stressor and what's calming for you, because I do have some clients that will say like, oh, I'll go get a pedicure or manicure. If that's calming for you, great. To me, it's not calming. I'm like, oh, it's something else I have to do for the day. It's onto my schedule, drive there. I'm thinking about everything I have to do when I'm there. So I don't have my nails done. But I'm just saying there's a difference between like, is this actually de-stressing me or is this causing more stress on your plate too? So that's where I always say you can do things that you pay for, like a massage or pedicures or different things. But if it's causing more stress, I don't really necessarily think it's a de-stressor. Reading a book, watching a funny comedy show, or saying like walking in your kitchen saying, Alexa, tell me a joke, like anything that can make you chuckle or decompress for a few minutes is always going to be more helpful than necessarily trying to buy something if that's just causing more stress for you.
I love that. So in other words, even if it's a small thing, as long as it's bringing you into that calming, as long as it brings you into that place of tapping into your parasympathetic system for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Even if you bring that, it's going to support that balance of your cortisol, releasing some of that inflammation. So in other words, girls, pick, right? Make a list of the things that you can do, and then every week make a decision, just like you do with your workouts. You know, hey, this week every day I'm going to focus on this and this, and I'm going to add that. Is, you know, some, you know, many times I've said that there is power in the 5 minutes break. You know, it's literally a 5 minutes, but boy, when you implement those 5 minutes, it is powerful, right? So don't take for granted, don't think that it's, you just have the 5 minutes and it's not going to be enough, so might as well don't do it. No, take the opportunity and do those things in 5 minutes, in 3 minutes, whatever it is that you have available for you. Because self-care, girls, you know, self-care in that way, it is part as well of getting your body to respond for the results that you're looking for, you know? So I know we started late, but that was, you know, the whole situation here with the computer. Let's see here. Interesting how sensitive we have become at our age. I know, right? Whatever external interventions we are using, it eventually comes down to internal dialogue and getting comfortable in our own skin. Boom. There you go. We can literally close with that. You know, I love when Sarah said the whole thing about your thoughts. That's huge, right? It's huge. It's going to bring so much toxins if you're so negative and you're constantly being hard on yourself and critical. That's another thing, right? So, Sarah, girl, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for all your wisdom and your knowledge, and you know how much you're helping. This was super great. We'll definitely be sharing more. Sarah will come back to do a nice dive, really deep dive on the flush protocol. And you know, we have a client here on this call that was dealing with so many gut issues, and you know, we have been working with her diligently on some protocols, and boy, she's already feeling amazing. So I don't care what anybody says, this stuff works. So for those that are serious and do the work. So I appreciate you, Sarah, so much. A great topic. Thank you for all the information. I love it. Thank you. Yes, girls, let's crush it. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Sarah. Have a good evening. Bye, girls.
Thank you.